Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Jafar Armali. I am an economics assistant professor at King's University College in Ontario, Canada. And I will be presenting a paper that I've been working on with my colleague, Megdad Rahimian from the University of Western Ontario. Our paper is the effect of public agreement on greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. So the United States is the second largest emitter of greenhouse gases globally. As you can see in the slide, for example, in 2014, the US contributed 15% of the global emissions in that year, even though their population size is less than 5% of the world's population. So despite the fact that there seems to be a broad consensus between scientists that greenhouse gas emissions are one of the causes, at least, of climate change, there seems to be a lack of such consensus among the public opinion in the United States. So just to show you an example about this lack of consensus, so there is a survey by a joint project between Yale and George Mason University that asks a sample of citizens in the United States different questions regarding their beliefs on climate change. And as we can see, between 2009 and 2022, the percentage of people who either think climate change is not happening at all, or that is not caused by humans, or that is not something to worry about, has been relatively stable. So if you don't believe it's happening, if you are not worried about it, then why would you take any actions to reduce emissions or to handle, basically, to deal with climate change? So our research question in this paper is, what is the quantitative effect of increasing the PCCA, the Public Agreement on Climate Change, in the United States on the level of emissions in the United States? The current literature have shown how public agreement can actually affect the emissions level. The channels suggested are basically through affecting the behavior at an individual level and at a collective level when it comes to emissions and climate change. However, the existing literature does not seem to quantify the effect of increasing public agreement on the emissions level, and this is the gap that we try to fill in this paper. So to do the estimation, we use the following fixed effects regression model, in which we use the measure of public climate change agreement in the previous year as an explanatory variable for the level of greenhouse gas emissions this year, along with other explanatory variables. But we face a problem. The problem is the endogeneity problem, because it is possible that some unobservable factors are affecting both public agreement and the level of emissions at the same time. So to deal with this problem, we thought about instrumental variables that could isolate exogenous variations in PCCA. And for this reason, we used lags of what is called temperature anomalies, to instrument for PCCA. So what is a temperature anomaly? It's basically, it's the difference between the temperature in a given year and the average temperature over 100 years in the past century. And why is that? Why do we use temperature anomalies as instrumental variables? Because studies have shown that there is a strong relationship between, for example, previous year's temperature anomaly and the perception about climate change among the public. And so for this reason, the fact that temperature anomaly, the lag temperature anomaly, can affect the public agreement on climate change in the previous year, but will not have any effect on the greenhouse emissions in the next year, given that we are using lagged anomalies. We think that using temperature anomalies as instrumental variables for PCCA is an appropriate choice. So our estimation strategy is a two-stage least square regression. In the first stage, we project the lagged PCCA on lag temperature anomalies and other variables. And then we get the projected PCCA to use it in the second stage as an explanatory variable. For the data that we use in the study, we gathered data at the county level in the United States. And the results, the main results of the study are as follows. In one case, we used the answer about whether the public believes that climate change is happening as our measure of PCCA. And in another case, we used the agreement on whether climate change is something that we should be worried about, whether it will cause harm to people in the United States or elsewhere in the present and the near future. And as you can see in both cases, after doing the two-stage least square as mentioned, there is a significantly negative relationship between PCCA, public agreement on climate change, and the GHG emissions per capita. As it stands, the United States is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions globally. They are, in fact, the second main contributor after China. But what seems to be slowing down decreasing emissions in the United States is the lack of consensus among the US public on climate change. There is a significant percentage of the US population who don't agree that climate change is happening or that we need to worry about it. So in this study, we try to quantify the effect of increasing the percentage of closing this gap and moving more towards the consensus. So we try to quantify the effect of increasing the percentage of people in the United States who agree on climate change, that it's happening, that it's worrying, that we need to deal with it. And what we find is that there is a significant relationship between increasing public agreement on climate change and decreasing greenhouse gas emissions in the following year, and that this could result in significant welfare gains for the US and globally, because as we know, the emissions will affect the whole globe through the climate change. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.